Alright, what are we doing here? Um, you know how I came up with a Hall of Fame ranking so I wouldn't keep re-ranking the top triple triad players of all time? Well, scratch that. I had an idea, so we're gonna look into it. Here, what I wanted to do was sort of break up players into the eras they played, and I'm gonna start looking through the top 40. No idea how far we'll get. But we're starting, for instance, because 40th on my list is Ace, who didn't play very much, people with a few tournaments we will not be including. So my 39th player is Reay. And hopefully, let's make sure this is all working. You can see his kind of runs in different points in time, right? And I think like sometimes when I'm doing win percentage type stuff, it misses that, he's obviously a different player in 2011-13 than he is 09 or 10. And if he had gone 07 instead of 27 or 37 instead of 27, that would somewhat change his overall numbers. But I don't really care about it, right? If he goes 07 or 27 in those two starting years, like either way, he was not yet the player he would become. And later, we see how good a player he becomes, a very good player, right? And so things like overall win percentage can be a little misleading, or that in his start and the return, he's lost his first two matches in majors. Is that going to hold up? Nah. Does that mean his peak in 11-13 is lower than it looks? No, it was a really good peak. So fundamentally, I want to just say these don't matter, right? If he had a run where, say, for a few years he went, 50%, that's pretty good. That would add to the legacy. But I think in general, you want to take something like this and say, this is what matters. This is the part that makes him a great, right? And I had a little trouble. I've divided it up into periods. You could divide it up into 11, 12, and then have 13 as a separate year. And I think the question is sort of, do you think going 73% over 15 games is more or less impressive than going 64% over 42 games? And one way to think about it is, what would he need to go from one to the other? And the answer is, you need to add 16 wins and 11 losses to go from 11-4 to 27-15. And, well, I think that a one way to think about it is, quite shortly we're going to hit a player who went 18-8 over a stretch. Now, if you compare 11-4 to 18-8, 11-4 is a higher win percentage, but you need to add 7-4 to that to hit 18-8, and that's a pretty hard record to achieve. That's quite a high win percentage, right? So 11-4 doesn't strike. I mean, obviously it's a higher win percentage, but I'm not convinced it's a greater achievement than 18-8. If you compare 18-8 to 27-15, you need to add 9 wins and 7 losses. I think that probably is pretty achievable for high end players. So, I think 11-4 is better than 27-15. So we're going to include these as separate things. And we're going to say Reay has these two really nice runs. What's 16 divided by 27? I'll have a calculator do it. 59.3%. So Reay has these two really nice runs. He goes 16-11 over a 2-year span, and he goes 11-4 over a 1-year span. Clearly, the 11-4 is the better run. So we're going to sort of build a ranking of runs. That's what we're going to kind of do. And Reay has two pretty impressive runs here. So next up is Bryce. Bryce didn't play very long, so we're going to ignore Bryce. And we're going to look at, and by didn't play long, I don't know how long she actually played or how long Ace played. I think they both played a reasonable amount of time. They didn't play in many tournaments, is what I'm saying. So we have Dreamvirus. Now, Dreamvirus has two runs. He played pretty consistently from 04 to 08, and then he came back in 2013-14. And again, if this was 3-5, if it's 05, it does change his overall win percentages, but it doesn't really change how I look at him as a player. So we're obviously deleting that. His good run is 04 to 08. Now, how does this compare? 24-11, 68.6% is over quite a stretch. Reay would need to go 13-7 for his better run to equal this, and the weaker run he'd need to go 8-0. While 13-7 is a lower win percentage than the one he has during his really good run, it's really hard to keep going winning 2/3 of your games. I think this is the best single run we've seen yet. though you could argue that Reay having two really nice runs overcomes that. But I think right now Dreamvirus has run its tops. Incidentally, it's really hard to even go 50% in tournaments. Obviously, like the super greats regularly put up win percentages way above that. But you just get some bad pairings. There are so few tournaments a year that if you're in really good form for like 4 months, that might be one tournament. There might be 3 or 4 tournaments you're not in really good form for. Also, the elimination format means a player that is true talent 50% against the whole field will be facing tougher than average opposition because each round will whittle down the field. You're not playing random members, you're facing other people that won. So if your true talent against the entirety of players is like 50%, you're expected to score like somewhere between 40 and 45% in actual tournament play. To actually score 50%, you need to be a clearly above 50% player. The point is, these are all incredible scores. We're looking at great players. Next up, we have Jedat. And Jedat's a kind of interesting case. So, yeah. He loses first round of his first bunch of tournaments. I don't care about this, right? This does hurt his win percentages. Again, in other stats I have, like you add up the win percentage, Jedat's is lower than you might expect from him. But also, who cares that he went out first round in his first 4 tournaments? That says nothing about how good he was as a player once he got good. Which he did in 05 and 6 when he puts up 69.2% over a 2-year span with a finals and a semifinals. These were in 7-round tournaments. Really great run. His Eris run is rightly considered really strong. I think actually I'm going to combine 07 to 09 because normally kind of if the years are clearly different performance, I will separate them, which is why I separated this out because as you can see, in 05-06 he's excellent. In 07-08, not so good. In 09, he looks back to kind of excellent form. But if I went 05 through 09, I'd include this 07-08 stretch that is not so good. So I separated them, but I also think 6-3 is a kind of small sample. Like, we're not including the players that just played 2 or 3 tournaments. So if a stretch is this long, it's probably... You either need a more extreme win percentage like Reay had with his 11-4, but that's also an extra tournament in there, or we should be combining it. And so I think it's fair to combine it here and say, he had his really great run, and then he was a 50% player, which again is hard to do for another 3 years. And then he was a 39% player for another 4 years after that, which over that time span, genuinely, you're not playing much. It can be hard to do. But I think that's not worth making it on the list. So we'll remove that, and Jedat has 2 runs. The 07 to 09 run is clearly the worst run we've seen yet, but it's also notably I think this adds to the legacy. That's why I'm not deleting it. I think he has a really high 05-06 peak, and then it's worth noting he's still a solid tournament player. 50% is still good. So I still want to include that here because I think that stretch adds to his kind of overall rank, and so it's important to list. And we're getting rid of things that I think are meaningless to how I'd rank you overall, but we're keeping stuff that I think is relevant, right? And going over 11 tournaments, 50% adds to his numbers. Now, where do we want to place this 05-06 run? Is it as good as Dreamvirus's run? Well, to catch up, he'd need to go 6-3. That's pretty hard. I don't think you can expect 6-3 there. And notably, he didn't go 6-3 in the next 9 games. So I think you can't expect that. How do we compare it to Reay's? Reay would need to go 7-4. That's about 65%. We know Reay didn't do that, but that doesn't mean the run isn't better just because you dropped off a bit. And if you take Reay's 11 to 13 period, he's right around that 64%. I think I like 18-8 slightly more than 11-4. But I think you can see why it might be reasonable, very reasonable. Again, this is weighting all tournaments equally. I don't think I said this. I'm including Team Rhinoas. I'm including closed tournaments. I'm including every tournament. I'm not separating it out. I am not adjusting for opposition. But if you look at this here, I think Jedat's 18-8 is a little better than Reay's 11-4. But Reay's 16-11 is better than Jedat's 16-11. And that does mean you end up they've played a kind of similar number of games over that, right? Like, Jedat played 11 more games in the better run. Reay played 5 more games in the weaker run. You could very reasonably have Reay as the better tournament player here. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to 35th. Who we got? We got Grat. Now, the 0304 run we're obviously getting rid of. The 2010 run, 4 and 4, that's not a long enough time that I'm impressed by going 50%. So we really have this 05 to 09 run. I could have split it up a little more, but he was pretty steady for the run. Like, maybe there was a slightly worse year in 08, but didn't play as much. Pretty steady for the run. 65% over 51 games. This is the longest run we've looked at by a lot. The previous longest was Dreamvirus's 35. Grat's 51 game run at 65%. Like, if we compare it to, say, Jedat's 0506 run, Jedat would need to go 15 and 10 to equal this. 60%. But it's over 25 games, right? If I asked like 3 and 2 over 5 games, it'd be like, yeah, you're going 18 and 8. You can go 3 or 2 over 5 games. But this is requiring you to go 15 and 10, which is essentially requiring you to be 60% over a few years, not over just one tournament, over 2-3 years. It's pretty close. How does it compare to Dreamvirus? Dreamvirus would need to go 9 and 7. I think Dreamvirus can go 9 and 7. So I think we still have Dreamvirus as the best run yet. I'm not sure about Grat versus Jedat. How about Grat versus Reay? Maybe that'll clarify. 22 and 14. Again, that seems close. These are all right in the same region for me. It's definitely better than 16-11. That would need to go 17-7, right? But like, we clearly have some divides, right? There's a gap here and a gap here that I made spaces for. I'm going to get rid of those spaces because we don't have that much space to work with. It's worse than Dreamvirus's run. It's right with the other two. I don't know. I'm going to put it in the middle because I don't know what I'm doing. You may disagree. And if you do disagree, that's fine, right? And Reay needs to go 22 and 14, which is hard. But note, he did 16 and 11 right after, right? He had the drop off, or right before. He had a weaker run, but 16 and 11 is pretty similar to 22 and 14. You need to go 6 and 3. I guess 6 and 3 is a little better. Okay, yeah, I'll have Grat just above Reay and below Jedat. Grat's best run. Then we've got Brenn. Now, Brenn's going to be weird because Brenn kind of doesn't. Brenn's going to stand out here. Here's Brenn. First of all, we're obviously getting rid of the 2-3. We're obviously getting rid of the 5-11. He kept playing. He hurt his win percentages. That doesn't, to me, say a lot about him. I think there's a case based on how many players dropped off, specifically starting. Like, if you look at our class so far, Jedat drops off starting 07, really, but then especially in 2010. Dreamvirus after 08, when he comes back, doesn't play much, but obviously doesn't do great. A lot of the old players, somewhere between 2007 and 2010, start really dropping off. And so this could be a thing of different era strengths, but you also, like, a lot of the players who got good newer, if they did play in 06, 07, did really bad there. And I would attribute that to it being, okay, they haven't gotten good yet, they're starting out, and their later numbers are more meaningful. But you might just as easily say the old players stopped playing near as much, and their later numbers aren't meaningful. So it's pretty hard to say. That said, we're obviously getting rid of everything but the 05, 06 peak, which is genuinely really, really impressive over 22 games. To equal Dreamvirus would have to go 7 and 6. Yeah, this is clearly the best run we've seen yet. And so Brenn's a weird one to rank because the overall numbers, you start adding it up, he has a bunch of downtime, you get win percentages that aren't particularly higher than these other players. But you start looking at the part that's like actually the meaningful part. Brenn looks pretty damn good. It's a very high peak. All right. In 33rd, we have Midas. Now, this measure, I think, doesn't quite capture how good Midas is. There's a bunch of stuff we're not including. We're not adjusting for strength of opposition. We're not adjusting for era. I think ELO ratings do some stuff that pure win percentages don't. But I'm hoping to sort of talk through this here and then keep talking it through with kind of more advanced numbers. And incidentally, like if we were looking at this list, it's not obvious how I'd rank them, right? I'd have Brenn ahead of Dreamvirus, and I'd have Dreamvirus ahead of Grat. I think that's true. But Jedat and Reay each have 2 runs that make the list. Does that move them up? Is Jedat third here, or is Jedat higher than that? Is Reay bottom at 5th here of the 5, or is he higher than that? There's a case both ways. I think the only thing I'm really confident of looking at this is I'd have Brenn number 1 of this group. So let's look at Midas. Okay. Clearly we're getting rid of 0607. This is before he becomes a good player. Then he has multiple runs. We could combine these. That would give a 5-year span of 60%. We'll think about that. Obviously, we're getting rid of the 1-2. 7-6 in the return. That's enough to say, like, I think this adds to his resume, right? I think it's enough games. I'll take Jedat's 22 games over Midas's 13 here. We'll see where Midas goes with this. But I think that's enough to say this is something that adds to Midas's legacy. And then the big question is, where do these two land? And should I combine them? So if I keep them separate, 17-10, obviously worse than Jedat's 18-8. It would need to go 16-8 to beat Grat's run. No, I can't say it. That's a given. Reay would need to go 6-6 to beat it. Yeah, Ray's first run is better. It's slightly better than Ray's second run, right? It would go in this slot. And Midas's first run, the 13-10 run, would go right here. So Midas could have 3 kind of very nice, but not elite runs on this list. Now, if we combine them and we just take 08 to 13, we can combine this because it is consecutive. He goes 30-20 or 60%. Now that's definitely still worse than Grat's 33-18. Reay would need to go 19-16. Yeah, that's very doable if you're going 11-4. So I think combining them would not help their placement. So we have Midas kind of has these 3 runs that are all very respectable and add up to, I think, being a special player. But, right, there's a clear drop-off. These 5 peaks are much higher than the peak we're seeing from Midas measured in this way. All right, in 32nd, we have Kefka. Now, Kefka's a pretty early player, though he does have a comeback. Now, looking at that comeback, you know what I'm going to do. I don't care. You're gone. And we have this 21-10 peak, 67.7%. Now, you compare that to Dreamvirus's peak, and Dreamvirus's is better. It's longer. It's over a span that includes years I think are more meaningful, and it is a higher win percentage. How does it compare to Jedat? That's close, right? Jedat needs to go 3-2. Jedat can go 3-2. Now we know he went 50% in the aftermath, but like 18-8 and 21-10 are pretty close. But I think I'll favor the 18-8 there. 21-10 versus 33-18. You would need to go 12-8, which is also 60%. So I gave Jedat credit for 60% over 2 tournaments. Can we give Kefka credit for 60% over 8 tournaments? Maybe not. All right, Reay would need to go 10-6. That's a little over 60%. Okay, so I think we found a home for him. I think we're going to put Kefka here. All right. So I think if I was just based on this information ranking these players, I'd have Brenn clear first. I would say Dreamvirus, Jedat, Grat, Kefka, and Reay are all like really close at their best. And Reay might be at the weaker end of that, but he has a little more supporting case. And Jedat, in the middle of that, has a pretty good backup set of years. And then I'd probably have Midas as the weakest of the group. But Midas also, well, the thing is, Midas going 30 and 20, like, we have seen a 50 game run here, right? Grat has a 50 game run, and it's a bit better. So it's not like a 50 game run at this level of play is unheard of at a 60% level. Okay, who we got next? We have not done Jaws yet. So Jaws has one run. No downtime, nothing to delete here. Jaws is going to look really good by win percentage because it's just that 63.9%, and there's no part of it where like it's bringing down his numbers. So this might be why Jaws ends up as the highest ranked of any player we've looked at in my rankings, is because he has no time before or after he gets good. Didn't mean to say save. Just typed it automatically. Okay, 2313. 63.9%. Now, if we compare that to Midas' 17 and 10, it's definitely better, right? Longer period, higher win percentage. So Reay's 11 and 4. Reay would need to go 12 and 9. That's about 57%. That's like 57.1, I think. It's 4/7. I think that probably comes out just below Reay, but let's compare to Kefka to see if we're doing anything crazy here. Kefka would need to go 2 and 3. Yeah, I mean, someone's going 67%. 2 and 3 is a reasonable expectation. So, okay. I think we'll put Jaws under Reay. Definitely below Kefka, probably below Reay, whose name I continue to pronounce wrong. And we have done 31st through 40th, having ignored the players with very short careers. And I think this is a kind of neat way to look at them because, again, a lot of the numbers I do, there are kind of two ways we classically do numbers, right? You either take the average, and the average will include all the downtime, or you kind of look at things like total icons. But total icons and stuff like that can be really misleading because, someone who plays forever and occasionally picks up icons might get a bigger count, but clearly that extra time they weren't actually particularly good, they just happened to get some icons. You can be good over a long time and happen not to get any icons. For instance, Dreamvirus over his run, I think icons his first 3 tournaments and then none of the others, but keeps putting up a good win percentage. He just keeps going like 3 and 1 in, 7-round tournaments where that's not an icon. So, or you could just get really bad pairings. There's all kinds of reasons you could or couldn't get an icon, but it's certainly going to favor longevity and things are going to start adding up. And so one of them is going to say, oh, longevity, I don't like that. That's going to lower your win percentage because you're not going to maintain your peak that long, right? And the other is going to go, oh, you played a short time? Well, you didn't make that many icons. You can't have been that good. And I think this kind of thing where we kind of look at eras and say, hey, this era is excellent. This era is not near as good as that one, but it's still good enough it adds something. This one, you were terrible, or like you had terrible results. I shouldn't say you were terrible. Again, we don't know. But you had really bad results for your level, right? Well, just scratch it. That means nothing. You were starting out, you were having a down period. That's fine. I don't think that affects your case very much. And so I kind of like this pulling out eras as a way of looking at players and giving them a kind of more, in one sense, honest look. Let's keep going. We've only been going 23 minutes. Mafijosie. This is a big one. So Mafijosie goes 14 and 5. We're obviously keeping that. In fact, we're obviously keeping all of these eras. There is the question, do we want to combine any of them? So we could combine multiple ways. So where would 14 and 5 land? It's worse than Brenn. It would need to go 10 and 6 to equal Dreamvirus, which is right about the cusp of what I normally include. Now, notably, he did in fact go 15 and 9 after that. So if we combine them, would that place higher? 29 and 14. 29 and 14, Dreamvirus would need to go 5 and 3. That's still right around Dreamvirus. Jedat would need to go 9 and 6. That's 60%. We keep talking about that number. Can you expect a 69%er to go 60% over their next I can't talk, 6 tournaments? That's pretty close. Okay, but 14 and 5. That's better than Jedat's 18 and 8. I think you can expect 4 and 3 at that point. So I think Jedat, Mafijosie looks better if we just take the 14 and 5 on its own. So we're going to grab that, and where are we going to put it? Second or third, right? 10 and 6. And he went really close to 10 and 6, right? In the immediate aftermath. 15 and 9 is 60%, right? That's, or 62, it's 62.5%. Sorry, it's 5/8. Knowing that, I think we are going to put it here. And in fact, Mafijosie is going to make this list a whole bunch of times. Mafijosie, very good. 15 and 9 for 62.5%. That's going to go behind Midas, ahead of Reay. That feels right. We should think about combining it again first. Do we want to turn this into 23 and 15? No, I don't think that would help. So, okay, Mafijosie is going to go right here. And Mafijosie's last run is going to go 8 and 6. 8 and 6 adds to the resume. Is it as good as 11 and 11? It's probably a touch better. All right. So Mafijosie lands on the list a whole bunch of times. Now, I think in general, kind of somewhere around here, like these three, I would generally say, this is not what made you a great player. This is a nice run, but not a standout thing. This adds to a resume, but isn't something that like makes the resume. And then I think where to set the cutoff. Maybe somewhere like here. These are runs that are clearly nice additions, and if you had just done this run, it would be pretty good. Like, it wouldn't get you into that conversation for top 30 or 40 all time, but it would put you very likely in the top 100 of all time. Maybe the Midas run shouldn't be here. But I think the other two are like, you have a run like this, you're definitely in my top 100. Maybe this Midas run should be here. Note that Midas has 3 such runs and they add up, and there's also other stuff going on in my rankings. And then we have this pile of runs that are kind of maybe something like this group. This is why this player is a top 40 player all time. And then we have Brenn's run, which probably suggests he should be the top of this group. Though, actually, Mafijosie, given that he has the second place thing and 2 other things that help. Okay, so if I was just based on this ranking these players, I would go Mafijosie number 1, Brenn number 2, and then it's close. Then there's some debate. Alright, so maybe we're gonna, to save space, we're gonna start doing stuff like this. So we can A, keep the tiers separated, and B, I still have space to do some more players because I'd like to keep going. So we kind of have ooh, yeah, this is a nice solid run that helps you. This is a really good run that helps you quite a bit. This is what makes this player great. This is their greatness. And this is really, really impressive. Okay, 29th is Virgil. Virgil didn't play enough. We're going to exclude him. 28th is Kazik. Interesting player. So obviously we're cutting 0405. Obviously we're cutting 1114. I think, you hit a 72% portion that's that long. We're not going to add in the 14 and 11. Where's the 14 and 11 go? It's right next to Midas's 1310. I think for this kind of part of the resume, adding in a game and going 1-1 is probably helpful, right? It's a lower win percentage, but just any length of doing something very similar slightly longer, I'm going to give a little more credit to. Like why I have Jedat's 11-11 ahead of Midas's 7-6. But you could obviously flip these. So that's Kazik's less impressive of his 2 runs. That's the one that, adds a bit. But our star run, 21-8. Well, this beats Jedat's 18-8. Does it beat Dreamvirus's 24-11? You have to go 3-3. We saw it right after this. He goes 14-11. He can go 50%. Does it beat Mafijosie's 14-5? Mafijosie would need to go 7-3. I can't just assume someone's going 70%. If we look at these players, 70% is really hard to go for any length of time. No, this is definitely better than that. Brenn needs to go 4-3 to equal this. 4-3 is doable. So this is either top of our second tier or bottom of our top tier. Which is it closer to? I think it's closer to Brenn. And this is our longest run over 70%. So this is like a new record for us. Very impressive. Right? Our previous, Jedat had a 26-game run that's almost 70%. Dreamvirus is a 35-game run. If we chopped it up, we could get him to 70%, but not over 29 games, right? I'd have to chop it in half to get to there. Yeah. Nicely done by Kazik. Good 06-08 run. All right, in 26th, we have Seif. Now, Seif's a kind of funny case of high peak, but he's a little more than the peak, as we'll see. First of all, obviously, this 4-10 period destroys his win percentage numbers, but I don't care. We're getting rid of it. 13-11 over 4 years. He was a perfectly solid tournament player. That's going to land him right behind Midas. For, this does not make you great on its own, but this is something that definitely, and for many players, this would be the peak of their best runs, right? These runs have a good chance to get you into the top 100 all time. These are good runs. Again, we're looking at the very best here. Everything here is going to be impressive and hard to replicate. So it's that 08-09 run. Now, the 08-09 run is actually really poorly cut off year-wise. You could make this look a lot more impressive and a lot closer to what Brenn did if the yearly cutoffs were a little different, but that's going to affect lots of players here. So 16-8, definitely worse than Jedat's 18-8. How does it compare to Grat? You'd need to go 17-10. How does it compare to Kefka? Need to go 5-2. All right, definitely worse than Kefka, so it got to be worse than Grat here. How does it compare to Reay? Reay needs to go 5-4. That's doable. How does it compare to Jaws? Jaws needs to go 7-5. 7-5 is pretty doable. Oh, and Reay, yeah. So I think, okay, I said that really, really unhelpfully, but I think Seif pretty clearly goes here. Now, that's a peak I personally have as much higher. Again, I think the year cutoffs are particularly bad for him, and I think if you look at the opposition he faced, this is probably the most impressive run here. Kind of interesting. Somewhat of it is just which players we've happened to talk about. But if you look at when the best runs are, we get 05-06, 06-08, 03-04, 04-08, 05-06, 05-09, 04-06. Reay's 2013 is a really different era than any of the other really good runs here. And I think that's worth thinking about. I think a few things happened. One, I think the level of competition got stronger. I think in the kind of 2010 to 2012 era, I think is peak site strength and peak difficulty of tournaments. Though you could argue now is harder because the tournaments are shorter, so it's even more filled with people that are just really, really tough to beat. The other thing is the best players of the early era were a lot of the players we're looking at. Like Mafijosie, if you stop the timeline in 05-06, Mafijosie's a top 5 player all time, right? Or top something around there. And I think that's fair. Like, Mafijosie is clearly very good and clearly stayed very good for a long time. From 03 to 11, Mafijosie is well over 60% over an 8-year span. That's ridiculous. But it's also to say, he went. First of all, his win percentages went down. Now, he may have been playing less. There can be lots of reasons for that. But it's also to say, the top of the list players often came a little later, but their win percentages are also just clearly higher. And I think the early years were a little more of a, there are a lot of really good players, and they're going to win games, but they can also lose a lot of games. And the peak players that came after were more consistent in basically only losing to each other and never losing to anyone else, and that gave higher win percentages. But okay, let's move on to Mette. Now, Mette is a kind of interesting case because we got that 06 run. Now, if we combine 06 into 06 to 08, it's 21 and 9, right? For a 3-year run, this is, a touch better than Jedat, pretty much on par with Dreamvirus, right? This 3-year run looks a lot like Dreamvirus's peak run. First of all, we're getting rid of 2013. His comeback is not part of this. Lowers win percentages, I don't care. So if we combine these, we get a run that looks similar to Dreamvirus, which is an excellent run. And he got a tournament win, right? If we don't combine them, how good do we think 11 and 2 is? I think it's better uncombined, right? I think someone goes 11 and 2, you would generally think in surrounding stuff they're going to be above 59%. But it is worth noting, we've seen a lot of people who, you see this 70%, now an 80% plus run, and the surrounding runs are, high 50s, low 60s, mid 50s, 50, right? It seems like, the average, say, 67% really impressive run is going to be sandwiched by 55% runs, something like that. So how much is it fair to assume a player will maintain the level? Unclear. That said, 11 and 2, I think, given that this is worse than Brenn's 17 and 5, he'd have to go 6 and 3, and 84% is clearly well above 6 and 3. But I think we still can't assume you get there. It's just too small a sample, right? If he went 84% over, 40 games here, and then it needed a 6 and 3 at the end, I'd be like, of course he gets the 6 and 3. He's been 84% over an incredible run, rounds up to 85. But as is, I don't think we can grant that. How about versus Kazik? Need to go 10 and 6? I think that's closer. Versus Mafijosie needs to go 3 and 3. So it's clearly in the Brenn Kazik tier. Clearly in the Brenn Kazik tier. And we clearly don't want to combine these. So let's actually just put the 10-7 in wherever it would go. It probably goes around here. Don't care too much about getting the exact rankings right in this group. Oops, again, didn't mean to save, just do it automatically. And where to put 11 and 2? 10 and 6 is 5 to 3, so that's 62.5%. I think I'm gonna assume. I think you may well disagree with me. I'm gonna put it here. And you might be like, this is obviously better than Brenn's run. But Brenn's run's over 6 tournaments because he won one of them, so, it's not just the number of losses. And Mette's run is over 3 tournaments. And I think it's just hard to keep the win percentages up. Those are close, though. Those are definitely close. Yeah. All right. Next one is tricky. Next one, I think, doesn't look that good by this way of measuring it, which is to say there's say you win a tournament, then have a down period, which is the case here, then win another tournament, then have a kind of down period. If you won your 2 tournaments in a row, your peak would look unbelievable, right? And if you have them split up like that, sometimes nothing jumps out as a clear peak. So here's 24th place, Broccoli. I think we want to combine the stats. I think it's pretty clear 9 and 5 and 17 and 12 aren't making that much of an impact here. So we're just going to turn this into the entire run of 26 and 17. Did I do that right? I think so. And 26 over 43, according to the internet, is 60.5%. So where does this land? Not super high. This is not a good stat for Broccoli. Broccoli is better than this is going to make her out to be. Broccoli is great. That said, is this better than Midas's 17 and 10? Midas would need to go 9 and 7. That's, we probably have a result here that's around 9 and 7. Okay, so that's something like 58%. Something like 58%. Can you expect someone to go 58% when they've been going 63%? It's probably pretty close. I think I'll put Broccoli top. There's a case either way. But I think a 63%er, can you assume them to go 58% over their next 7 tournaments? Probably not. So I think I'm comfortable putting Broccoli ahead here. All right, next one is a case where I always thought of him as a player of 2 peaks, but the 2 peaks actually sort of happened consecutively, just took a few years off playing tournaments. Which is, we've got D. All right, obviously getting rid of 0506, obviously getting rid of 13 to 15. Again, going 7 and 11 over a period would add to the resume of some players. It's just when you're fighting, because it's actually pretty solid tournament record, it suggests you're about the median tournament player, which is pretty solid and shouldn't hurt most people's cases. But obviously, once we're getting into the top 30 all time, this isn't helping their case. Okay. 2 runs, we could combine them because technically there's no games played in between. So we could get 30 and 15, which is very easy to do. That's 2/3, 67%. 30 and 15 would look very similar to where Dreamvirus lands on 24 and 11. Separated, we have 18 and 8. That's right the same as Jedat. And then we also get a 12 and 7, which probably lands somewhere in our 3rd tier of results, probably right after Reay. Probably goes, but probably ahead of, 12 and 7 is better than 14 and 11 by a pretty clean amount. So do we want to combine them? Because 18 and 8 gets him right tied with Jedat. If we combine them and we turn it to 30-15, is that better than Jedat? Well, Jedat would need to go 12 and 7 over the next 7 games. The math's really easy there. And I think we can't assume a 69. I think we've learned one thing here. It's that a 69% run does not mean a 63% run is going to precede it or come after. So I think we do want to combine them. I think we'll get a better top spot combined. I think it is more impressive as 1 run. And where does that run get us? Is it ahead of Dreamvirus? Six and 4. 60% keeps being the amount I say is kind of doable, but I'm believing that less and less as we go on. I'm going to put D ahead of Dreamvirus here. Not sure about it. I should think, is it better than Mafijosie? Mafijosie would need to go 16 and 11. We actually have someone that went 16 and 11, so we'd need to go 59% over 11 tournaments. That's actually pretty tough, as we've seen. I think I'm going to still have Mafijosie ahead, but I could be wrong there. I might be overrating Mafi's run. I've sort of changed how I do this as we've gone, or how I compare different length runs. But hopefully we have a good list. Next up, we have Tezuka. So we're going to hit some modern players. I'm going to do 22nd and 21st, and then I'm going to stop. Tezuka. Okay. So first of all, I think we're definitely going to combine the 08 to 16 run into one thing. I realize it covers this huge span of time, but it seems like pretty consistent level, and this gets us up to enough games we can go, yeah, that's a very solid run. Very solid run. 54.2% over a nice stretch. And 13 and 11 puts it worse than 13 and 10, tied with 13 and 11. It's going to be equal Seif. Okay. And then we got two more runs to look at. Now, we can't combine them because they're completely separate. 14 and 7. Well, that's worse than Seif 16 and 8 because it's shorter, but it's going to be right around there. So how does it compare to Jaws? Would have to go 9 and 6. That's another would have to go 60%. If there's one thing we've learned, it's really hard to assume someone will go 60%. So I'm going to put Tezuka here. Would have to go 12 and 10 to equal Broccoli. That one I feel more comfortable on. And we also saw him put up a slightly better record, or basically exactly 12 and 10 in the aftermath. So I think that's fair. Head of Broccoli behind Jaws. Okay. That gets review. And 13 and 5. Well, the obvious comparison is Mafijosie's 14 and 5. It's not going to beat 14 and 5. Would need to go 17 and 10 to equal D. That's 63%. That's pretty tough. Okay. To equal Dreamvirus would need to go 11 and 6. Almost 2/3. Don't think it's beating Dreamvirus. Okay, to beat Jedat would need to go 5 and 3. That's over a shorter span. That's doable. But I think that's right on the edge. 62.5%. We're just 3 tournaments, but still, it's kind of hard. Very hard. To equal Grat. It's weird that I'm having this a lot of spots lower than the 14 and 5. So maybe I need to rethink that 14 and 5's placement. Let's do that after, and then we'll do the last person. To equal Grat, 20 and 13. I don't have a automatic sense of what that is. That's almost exactly 60% over a long time. To equal Kefka would need to go 8 and 5. These are all have to go over 60%. And it's just not quite a big enough sample that I'm confident that's happening. All right. It beats Reay. I can just copy paste. This group is all really close, clearly. Like, the ordering between them is highly dependent on how much you value short-term versus long-term. Should I be moving Mafijosie down? Needs to go 16 and 10. That's over 60%. Needs to go 9 and 6. That's exactly 60%. Needs to go 4 and 3. 4 and 3 is definitely doable. All right, I think I'm going to move Mafijosie only down one slot. But again, this section clearly, like, I currently have, Tezuka middle of it and bottom, but like he's one win away from being second in the group, right? It's all a very close group. None of this is particularly confident. Okay, and 21st, our last for today, is the Piggyman. Now, there's a really big question of what do we want to combine. There's a lot of stuff we could combine. So I think the first question, because Piggyman has just been a really consistently good player. You can see out of the gates, he's immediately strong. And then he just gets better. And if you include that 22-23 includes the finals, and he's really hurt by Garland, not by Garland, by the recent closed tournament. Because a closed tournament, you can pick up 2 losses, right? And so you take out that tournament or remove it to only 1 loss, and suddenly his win percentage there is right in line with 11-13. I think basically he's just gotten better and better as a player, and he started as good, and he has done it in very difficult eras. And if you look at his opposition, I think he's done it against really tough opposition. And there's a reason I have Piggyman 21st and ahead of anyone else in this group. And here, I don't know how impressive his peak is striking you, but he's been so good. And so we should be able to figure out a way to combine this in a way that looks really good. So I guess the most important thing is how high can we get his peak? So where does 13 and 6 land? Well, it's worse than Tezuka's 13 and 5. It's worse than Reay's 11 and 4. It's similar to Seif 16 and 8. We need to go 3-2. And it would need to go 10-7 to equal Jaws. And it would need to go 1-1 to equal Tezuka. So it's landing somewhere after Reay and ahead of Tezuka. Somewhere in this range, right? I guess technically somewhere in this range. Okay. What if we combine it with 22-23? We add a 9-5 record. We get up to 22 and 11. So that's 66.7%. That's not as good as D's, who did it longer. That's not quite as good as Dreamvirus. That's an easy comparison. Not quite as good as Jedat. We need to go 11 and 7 to equal Grat. Interestingly, went 14 and 9, clearly capable of that. So maybe we just want to combine all three of these? Where would that get us? So the bottom three, 09 to 23, gets us 36 and 20. 36 and 20 for reference, just because the percentages are going down as we combine, is 36 out of 56, which is the longest streak we've seen yet, I believe. Oh, stop. Oh, God, stupid computer. Okay, stop reloading as I type the numbers, please. Or asking where my location is. Okay. 36 out of 56 is 64.3%. Just right in line, actually, with this 9 and 5. Yeah, because it's a multiple of. There you go. So 36 and 20. Not as good as D's 30 and 15. Mafijosie would need to go 22 and 15. It's not quite as good as that. Dreamvirus would need to go 12 and 9. Jedat would need to go 18 and 12. So it probably lands ahead of Jedat there. I think it does, because that's 60% number we keep saying. And we can't assume someone will keep up 60%. People just don't. 60% is really, really hard to maintain. So I think that gets us a peak for Piggyman at 4th. We can 4th in this tier, 7th overall. But we can also divide it up and get him landing multiple places. I think we're going to aim for the highest peak spot. So we're going to go Piggyman 09 to 23, 36 and 20, 64.3%. And then sadly, the 07-08 period is too short to give a boost there. No, it's only 2 tournaments less than this, but I think, we'll put it there. Little something. And that's the current list. I think I feel pretty good about this list as it goes. Like, I do think if we added in other factors, I'd have Piggyman higher, I think. But I think this is Brenn, Mette, and Kazik having the absolute highest 3 peaks here strikes me as correct. D, Mafijosie, and Piggyman specifically coming almost basically next also strikes me as correct. Really impressive from Dreamvirus. You can also see why Jedat was for a long time considered one of, if not the best player to have never won a tournament. Grat, Kefka, Tezuka. Tezuka showing up twice in Tier 2 is really impressive. Tezuka showing up twice in Tier 2 might say why you could have Tezuka as the best player we've talked about. And my list has him as the second best player we've talked about, so I clearly wouldn't be against that. And he even gets a third appearance. Shout out to Tezuka. Alright, so we'll continue from here at a later date.